So I do think that stress is trying to help us. It only hurts us when we don't acknowledge it, when we don't assess what's really going on, appreciate it's actually trying to help us.
Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Impact Show. And today you're in for a real treat. My great friend, Dr. Heidi Hanna, is in the house. Now, Heidi's been called a stress expert, but she's really a brain expert. She does amazing things. I've known her for a long time. She's spoken at many of my retreats and conferences. She's an awesome woman. I've been to her wedding, and guys, wait till you hear today's episode. When we talk about dropping knowledge and wisdom bombs, I mean, we're talking everything, not only about the pandemic of COVID-19, but we're talking about stress in general. She gives her Fab Five. She talks about the 3 principles of stress mastery. We're talking about anxiety and how to overcome anxiety, whether you're a high school or college student or an adult dealing with depression, like all of these things. And then Heidi has some real talk in here. She opens up about some of her own struggles and gives you the strategies that she uses personally as a brain expert so that she can overcome and win the battle between the ears every single day. Now, check this out. Dr. Heidi Hanna is the CEO, meaning Chief Energy Officer of Synergy Brain Fitness, a company providing brain-based health and performance programs to individuals and organizations. So she does a lot. She has 3 best-selling, New York Times best-selling books, The Sharp Solution, Stressaholic, and Recharge. Read those books. Heidi's been featured at many global conferences, including the Fortune magazine Most Powerful Women in Business, ESPN Leadership Summit, and the $1 Million Roundtable. Her clients have included Google, Starbucks, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, and WD-40, as well as the PGA Tour and the National Football League. Heidi's a certified humor professional with the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. Although she won't admit she's funny, she actually is really funny. You're going to laugh in this episode. You may shed a few tears, but most importantly, it's going to touch your soul in a way that hasn't been touched in a long time. My friends, let's go out to this very special episode with Dr. Heidi Hanna. All right, everyone, you are in for a treat today. Yes, I have Dr. Heidi Hanna in the house. Heidi, how are you today?
I'm so good. I love talking to you. It's great to see you. I'm sorry we're not able to be together in person, but your energy just transmits, brother. Like it is on point. Thank you.
Same. I feel the same about you. And I always love talking with you because, I just read your bio and people are like, wow, how would you define yourself when you talk about, all the time I say, get your mind right, but I say you're a brain health expert. How would you define yourself to somebody else?
You know what? It actually depends on context. I consider myself a stress detective. I'm also a doctor. I mean, I'm getting my 2nd doctorate right now in global leadership and change. I'm a lifelong student, and I love to be a teacher when my message resonates with people. So I don't know. I'm kind of always in flow trying to figure out how I can best support people depending on where I am,
Wait a second. You say you're getting your 2nd doctorate right now?
Yeah, you didn't know that. Apparently, that's going to make me a paradox. My friend Paul tells me. So.
What is your 2nd doctorate going to be in?
So we need to talk more, Todd. I'm getting a 2nd doctorate at Pepperdine University in global leadership and change, and the reason I'm doing that is that most of my work previously was really around like human performance. So I have a master's degree in psychology. My PhD was in holistic nutrition. I had training in exercise physiology, but I've just been fascinated by the brain. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing integrative neuroscience research with my collaborators, which is amazing. But I still feel like there's this massive gap between what we know and what we do. So I'm looking at human adaptability and specifically how we can adapt in more positive ways. So my new book, which will be coming out next year, it's bizarre, but it's actually my dissertation like on steroids because I got so excited about what I was writing about. I was like, I don't want to wait another 3 years for my dissertation published. I want to teach this now. So we're actually going to publish a book in April 2021.
Well, one thing I always notice, and whatever you're studying or sharing, it often is on a topic of stress. Matter of fact, you just had your Global Stress Summit, which was awesome, by the way. That was incredible.
You're awesome.
Can people still access that, by the way?
They can. It's totally free all year long. In fact, we'll probably just leave it free until we do the next one next year. So awesome segments, including yours. Really thought leaders, experts, clinicians. I mean, it's really powerful. So we just want everybody to have access. You can go to globalstresssummit.com for that.
Perfect. Guys, check that out, globalstresssummit.com. I mean, not only did I participate in that, I listened to all of the incredible presenters. I know my wife, Melanie, listened to that, and that was amazing. So folks, do yourself a favor after listening to this episode, check it out as well. One of the topics, obviously, with the Global Stress Summit, you speak a lot on stress. Yeah. And I guess the first thing is what the heck is stress? I mean, we're in the midst of COVID-19, perhaps one of the more stressful times in our history. But how would you define stress? And with COVID-19 going on, talk to us about stress.
I know, it's like everybody talks about it. And I actually became fascinated by it when I was a child because I was told that all of my problems were stress related. So imagine, if you would, a 10-year-old having debilitating stomach aches and headaches. And then at 12, I started fainting for what seemed like no reason. So I went to a lot of different doctors and, got so many different diagnoses. I mean, they told me at one point that I had an ulcer, and then they told me I had food allergies, and then it was leukemia, and then it was epilepsy. I mean, literally like throwing darts at a dartboard to try to figure out how to help me. And I didn't get any good answers. And it kept coming back to the same thing, which is so annoying. It's probably just stress. And I'm 12, like what stress do I really have? So I was fascinated by it. I always wanted to help other people. I wanted to figure out what was going on with me. I wanted to figure out, most of all, why I could have so much information about the brain and about mental health, and yet I still couldn't transform my own life. Like I was still being hijacked by my own brain, essentially. So actually, I started asking good questions. It's always the first thing I tell people to do. Ask good questions. I started asking the experts, and that's what started the Global Stress Summit. Was 4 or 5 years ago. I started asking people, and thank God, amazing people like Bruce McEwen, my mentor, who unfortunately recently passed away, said yes. Rick Hansen said yes. Robert Sapolsky, Stephen Porges. It was like people were willing to have this conversation. And I started with this question, and I said, okay, how do you define stress? And I thought that would be an easy question for them to answer. Like, they're the geniuses that wrote all the books, but it would take them the whole 30-minute segment to try to explain to me what stress was. And I thought, we keep talking about this. We tell people stress is killing us. We tell them it's causing all of these diseases and disorders. 75 to 90% of medical visits are stress related. I mean, on and on and on. And yet we don't even know what it is. So I really did a deep dive. I asked the questions, I studied the research, and I came up with what I think is a really good way to contain stress in a way that's manageable. And that is that stress is what happens when demand exceeds capacity. Ooh. And the first thing I want people to hear when I say this is, you didn't hear me say anything about good or bad, positive or negative, distress, eustress. Like, I understand that a lot of us have been taught that at one point. We were taught the stress response. We were taught eustress, distress, good stress, bad stress. And people love to talk to me about that. And it's like, yes, and I want to acknowledge all the hard work that we've done studying our biology and chemistry and all of that. And it's not quite right, because we've all had bad things happen to us that cause good outcomes. We've had good things happen with bad outcomes. So stress in and of itself doesn't have an emotional characteristic or quality. It just is, right? So people who will argue with me, and by the way, people love to argue with me on this and say, well, stress doesn't exist, just get your mind right and you won't have stress. And it's like, well, but here's the thing. I mean, Todd, you go to the gym. Is that stressful to your body? Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this so many times. The important part that people don't want to focus on is recovery, is rest, is recharge. Like, they want to go amp themselves up and be fueled by stress hormones. And that's fine as long as it's short term. But the problem, our stress problem is not actually a stress problem. It's a lack of recovery. It's a lack of taking care of ourselves. It's the inability to oscillate, because everything in life is supposed to oscillate. And when we live our life like a flat line, it is toxic. It's going to destroy us. So whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, socially, financially, systemically, stress can be bad if we don't use it the way it's intended, and it's used to fuel positive change. That's why I love what you do, because you're looking at the reality and saying, okay, here's what we need, but there's two ingredients. We have to stimulate the system to break down, but then we have to build it back up. And we know that in physical fitness, right? Like I'm sure you are so on top of your athletes, making sure they get their downtime, whether they want it or not. They have to recover, relax, recharge, take time out. I mean, am I wrong?
Well, no, I'm shaking my head. I've got like 50 questions off of that one statement. Can you just reiterate your definition of stress? Because it's important.
Yes.
That how you define it. What was it again?
Stress is what happens when demand exceeds capacity.
What happens when demand exceeds capacity?
Yep. So look at that any way you want. If you say we're experiencing a lot of stress right now because of COVID-19, this is where I become the stress detective. This is my favorite role. Why are we experiencing so much stress? So on one hand, we know that calls to the suicide hotline have gone up almost 900%.
What?
I know, having gone through my own testing fiasco, how difficult that is emotionally when you're in pain and you can't get help. We have a lack of communication, a lack of clarity, a lack of leadership in a lot of places. And by the way, I am not pointing fingers. This is hard stuff we're dealing with.
Amen.
So I don't like to blame anyone. What I like to do is say, what's the lesson in all of this? What can we do? So one of those things, Todd, is clarity, communication, control. Control is a huge factor. When we can't control our circumstances, then it's really important that we focus on what we can control. We can focus on what we focus on, right? We can focus on our mindset. We can focus on our physical activity, even if it's limited for a little while. Like, there's a lot of stuff floating around out there right now. We really can't do a lot about the fact they're closing the beaches down. But we can put our feet in our own backyard on the grass for a few minutes and get the benefits of being outside. So I think that's an important shift. See, I can't help myself. I get so excited about this that I want to go straight to like, let's fix it.
Let's go to the
Here's
beach.
all the solutions.
Well, but this is a good topic, because I think what you said about, your athletes need downtime, your clients need downtime. I think all of us can focus on recovery. But here's the challenge I'm finding, Heidi. And I don't know if you're in the same boat or if it's just several of us, but like, I feel like right now, like I'm drinking out of a fire hose, right? There's so many things coming at me, and there's so many things that I'm trying to do. Now, I know as a coach that I need to be focusing on recovery, and there are specific strategies, as you mentioned, that I am doing, but I know in a very, very chaotic, stressful time that although recovery is very important, it is harder than ever to do it. People keep asking me, like, what do you, okay, it really comes down to maniacally focusing on, okay, sleep number one is like, I've got to find sleep. And there's some nights where it's not good because the mind is tossing and turning. But I want you all to know, as you listen in today, like what Heidi's talking about, I'm just like you, like, I want to make sure that I can allocate my schedule and time and energy and focus to make sure in my windows of time that I can put my output when I am not in stress. And that's why movement and exercise and sleep and recovery are not only optional now, absolutely mandatory to build the immunity to do these things. So you're preaching to the choir here with me, and anyone listening in, is we're all in this together.
And there's another layer to this. So I want to say, with you, I was an athlete. I was a softball pitcher in college. I had a full ride scholarship. I knew what it meant to train. I studied exercise physiology. I studied nutrition, psychology. Like, I looked at all the pieces. What I want everyone to keep in mind is, yes, we need to do the basics. So I call them my Fab Five for brain health and fitness. They are eat, move, sleep, rest, connect. Common sense, right? So what we eat, how often we move, and what we do when we're moving. Our sleep should be 7 to 8 hours. Our rest is actually downtime. That's cognitive rest, emotional rest. That's what we're going to come back to. And then social connections. So most of us as coaches, as trainers, as healers in any way are actually drinking out of the fire hose right now of need. There's never been more need, right?
That's right.
I have more work opportunities than I've ever had before. And I was wanting to stay home. So it actually works out well for me. But The other piece is that we now have to really look at our mental and emotional discipline and habits the same way we have our physical. And the challenge is no one really wants to talk about it, because there's this sense, and I'm sure there's people listening right now that are like, I like my stress. Like, I'm not really down with this. I wrote a book a few years ago called Stressaholic. And the reason I wrote it was because here I was, a stress expert who couldn't stop working. And I realized I'm addicted to work, but it's more than that. Like, what's going on? Why is it so hard to slow down? And I'll tell you what the truth is for most of us. We're scared to death that if we slow down, we might not start up again. Because we have been running. I had goosebumps on myself, from my toes to the back of my head, goosebumps. We're afraid that if we stop, we won't be able to start up again, because we've been running so hard for so long with the messages that say, live like you're dying, hustle, hack, right? And I'm like, I actually think we've hacked enough. I think we need to heal a little bit. And I'm sorry to say this, but you're going to be just fine. Slow down, take a deep breath, use some comedy, cry, take a bath, like do what you need to do to realize that you actually can slow down and actually be more successful. You don't have to hustle quite so hard.
So do you think this in any way is a gift? I hate to say this is a gift, but is this in any way a gift because it's resetting us and the crazy torrid pace that we've been under? Is perhaps all of this, which has a lot of negative repercussions, but is it a possibility, an opportunity to potentially pivot into resetting and recalibrating us?
So I always want to start by acknowledging the pain and the suffering that people are dealing with. And I know you do too.
Yes.
So I'm never going to say sacrifice this many people so the rest of us can figure it out.
Correct.
Ironically, 2 years ago when I got ready to do my first TEDx talk, the topic I wanted to talk about was how stress is saving the world with or without us. I didn't do that. I did something else because I felt like I'm not sure people will get the point I'm making. The point I'm making is, guess what? This planet is self-correcting. And if that means that some of us burn out, break down, wear out, that might be what has to happen in some ways. Then I feel like that's a very charged statement. So let me shift it a little bit more gently by saying we are in an amazing opportunity to recalibrate the collective system. And that's why I went back to school, because I wanted to see how could organizations help us to be more resilient. I mean, depression is the leading cause of disability in the workplace. Depression. What does that come from? Well, it comes from overactivating the nervous system short term, which causes anxiety, which is, by the way, the largest mental health problem in college students. And then you maintain that for a long period of time. And guess what? What goes up must come down. So you're either going to oscillate every day or you're going to get jacked up and hyped up. And then you're going to find yourself wondering why you're so emotional or you're so reactive or you're so frustrated or you're flipping someone off in the car or whatever. You're going, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. But that's the collective kind of swirling that's happening right now. So I think there's a massive opportunity. I'm going to say one more thing that people may or may not like. I'm getting more brave in some of my statements.
Yeah.
And that is, I genuinely believe stressing is a blessing once we know how to use it for good. In every experience where we feel stressed, our brain and our body are trying to give us energy and information to fuel positive change. It's up to us whether we try to manage it, which I think is like the old hat. Let's not do that. Manage is like push it away, push it down, ignore it. A lot of us were We're brought up that way of like, I know I was. It's all
We're not even grown up yet. We're not grown up yet.
I know. I'm totally not grown up.
We're still growing up.
Go back to being more childlike. We'd all do it.
Amen to that.
So yeah, I mean, I think we have to, again, like acknowledge what we're feeling is hard. And I have this very simple kind of 3-step process I use. I call it stress mastery, which is to assess, appreciate, and adjust. So assess what's really going on. When you feel stressed, ask yourself good questions. Why is this happening? Not why is this happening like poor me victim mentality, but literally, why is my back aching? Why is my head hurting? Why does my stomach hurt? If you're an embodier, I'm an embodier. I feel it in my body first. If you're more of an emotional reactor, why am I being a jerk? Why am I frustrated? Why do I have brain fog? Why am I more confused? Like all of these things are like the gas light in your car going off saying, hey, dummy, stop, fill up the tank. Like you're not going to say, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. God forbid your cell phone battery starts to die, you're going to charge that sucker right now. But with the human brain and our nervous system, we just think that we're endless, and we're not. We're seeing the consequences of that. So I do think that stress is trying to help us. It only hurts us when we don't acknowledge it, when we don't assess what's really going on, appreciate it's actually trying to help us. So just appreciate one thing about that. I have a little bit of back tension right now. I'm a weekly massage person. Haven't been able to get that done lately, although I'm doing the other things I can to try to cope. So I feel that. And to just say, you know what, how cool that my brain and my nervous system are telling me I probably need to do more stretching, or maybe I need to get more sunshine, or maybe I need to take another hot bath, whatever it is, right? They're nudging us to self-correct. If we don't listen, that's where the problem lies. And then we adjust. So that adjustment, that last step of that assess, appreciate, adjust, is to take some action, imperfect action, any action. We have to mobilize the stress, and just keep in mind, especially for your audience, that sometimes taking action is inaction, because sometimes it really is being still and like being okay, being still. That's hard.
That is so hard. Exactly. That is so hard, because we are conditioned and programmed to constantly moving forward. When I talk about tapping into the whispers, it's stillness is one of the most challenging things to do. Getting the morning time, or whatever time you actually sit down and meditate or pray, stillness, I believe, is where you find your most profound divine wisdom, but it's hard. It's so hard. I love that, by the way. Assess, appreciate, and adjust, those three steps. And I want to come back to something you said earlier. You talked about anxiety for students, college students, high school, but I think anxiety is something that many people are suffering from. Can you just go back to that for a moment and talk about, are there specific strategies that someone could use? Because I love the Fab Five: eat, move, sleep, rest, connect. I think the rest part is something we can all get better at all of those, right? But for me, like the rest right now is like a signal coming out of like rest. Talk more about that and anxiety, please.
Yeah, so I think just like we need to define stress, it's helpful to define what anxiety is. Because actually, if I ask a group, what is stress? Most of them will say anxiety, and those are two very different things. So again, I'm going to encourage everyone, let's take the emotional aspect or the mental aspect. Let's just look at what it is. So if stress is what happens in the gap between demand and capacity, and there's a series of reactions, and we could get super nerdy and maybe another time talk about exactly what's happening and why, but basically there's a short-term reaction that happens fueled primarily by adrenaline. There's a long-term reaction that happens fueled primarily by cortisol, and they act totally opposite. One is fight or flight, the other is freeze or faint. So one's speeding you up, the other's trying to slow you down. And by the way, most of us are trapped in the freeze faint types of reactions, which is why we have digestive problems, headaches, all of that. So that said, what is anxiety? Well, anxiety is really the physical manifestation of that chronic stress state that may also have elements of worry. So worry is cognitive. Anxiety is more emotional. And by the way, emotional is energy in motion. Emotion is actually a bodily sensation. It's not a feeling. So if you look at how the brain is organized, and I teach this in a lot of ways, my TED Talk, I talk about this too, the brain's organized sensing and then feeling and then thinking, and that goes bottom to top. So anxiety gets trapped in the sensory area of the brain and the base of the brain and throughout the nervous system. And that's what gets us to feel shortness of breath, heart palpitations. It's actually not just the brain, but it's the vagus nerve, which is in charge of slowing us down and giving us the parasympathetic balancing reaction. So there's this dance that's supposed to be happening all the time, right? You put the gas pedal on, you gently tap the brakes. You put the gas pedal on. So that's what should be happening all day long in our oscillation. Anxiety is when I feel like either the gas pedal gets stuck and we're no longer able to safely tap the brakes, or in really kind of extreme situations like mine, they're both stuck. It's like gas pedals down, brakes down, grinding the gears, everything's just like melting down. And essentially that's what my condition, vasovagal syndrome, is it's a hypersensitive nervous system that's partially genetic, partially early life experience, that gets overactivated. So where most people, like for you, if you had a true emergency, you would probably be the first one, right? To fight, flight, figure it out. That's
right.
awesome. For me, in a true emergency, I'm a rock star too. I actually get really calm. I can help everyone meditate and breathe. But as soon as that's over, I will faint because my system goes, okay, what do I have to do to cope? And then all of a sudden, if it really feels like it's a near-death experience, I'm traumatized by that. So my system just says, hey, there's nothing left for us to do but play dead. And I don't mean to make light of that because it's, people send me fainting goats videos all the time. I fortunately love humor. So just think about that for everyone. Anxiety is more that trapped sensory experience that happens in our body where we feel like we can't breathe. We feel stuck in all of that. It's actually a high energy experience. And then on the flip side is the depression. So why does depression come? Because actually the brain and the nervous system are rewiring themselves. So as we're overactivating our anxiety, we actually see an increase in the area that is responsible for activating when we have fear. So we become hypersensitive to fear. Well, over time, we then lose connection to the problem-solving part of our brain that causes the depression. So there's literally a reshaping, rewiring happening.
Wow.
The good news is, before I end on that note, we can fix it. So just like training a muscle, and this is why I love using the analogy of physical fitness and saying brain fitness, we can do something. We can take control. You are not hijacked by your brain for the rest of your life. It's the college program I'm teaching to teach college students how to be the boss of their own brain, to say, once you assess, appreciate, and adjust, and repeat that cycle over and over again, you build mental and emotional capacities that you didn't have before.
Can you all see why I love Heidi Hanna? Can you all see it? I've got 2 pages of notes. I have 2 pages of notes. Whenever I take notes during my own podcast, it's a great sign. Perhaps this is the most important podcast episode I've ever done with a guest because let me tell you what, Heidi, you are delivering some amazing content right now. And I know it's resonating with everyone that's listening right now. And please go back and listen to this a second time if you have to. If you're out for a walk, jog, or run, or a workout, go back, take notes, share it with your family members because this isn't just a COVID-19 or coronavirus. This is going to be for there's always a new challenge. There's always a new stressor. And what you're talking about is just so relevant and pertinent. So thank you and gratitude. But I want to talk about some solutions and strategies. And I want to talk specific to what Dr. Heidi Hanna does. So
I love that.
I want to get personal. So like when it comes to hacks and it's kind of funny because sometimes I've heard you've been called a stress expert. I was like, is that a good thing? Like you're a stress expert, right?
I'm really good at it.
Right? But you are. But I also look at you as someone that understands the brain and mindset. And, I talk about get your mind right. Like the brain and the mind. What are some specific, even best practices, habits you're doing right now to quote, get your mind right?
I do a lot. And it's true. I mean, I think people can hear I'm a stress expert because I've been there, done that. I've had fainting spells. I've had 2-week anxiety attacks where I was hospitalized. And by the way, I will let you all know, not everybody knows this. While that happened, I was traveling around the world as a motivational speaker with a New York Times bestselling book. This is why this is so important, because the information isn't going to transform your experience of life. We're all looking for more information. What's the hack? What's the pill? What's the solution, right? What's the diet? What's the workout? And it's dude, what do you need? Like, let's figure it out for you. So you ask me and I will tell you, I love talking about this because I moved to San Diego specifically to be by the ocean. I am highly sensitive. I need sunlight. I need fresh air. I need nature. I've lived downtown for 11 years because I was close to the airport, but there's also a lot of noise down here. So literally yesterday, got the keys to my new 12-month apartment with a view of the ocean in La Jolla, listening to the sounds of the ocean, not sure yet how I'm going to make it work, but I'm just like, I'm going to make it work because I've learned for me that I really love this beach brain philosophy. And I did a study. I've been doing a study with Reef for a few years. They're a local beach brand. They've been awesome. They wanted to see if there was any way we could partner to help mental and emotional health. And I said, here's the thing. Yes. And I've been this is funny. I've been kind of duking it out with them a little bit because they keep wanting to get me to encourage people to go to the beach. And I do want that. but the majority of our world can't. So what I'm saying is you can take your brain to the beach even when your body's stuck at home or in the office or in the boardroom. And so we're starting to actually do some cool events like pop-up events where we're going to go to a boardroom in Kansas City and recreate a beach experience with essential oils, sounds of the ocean, sights of the ocean. We'll change the color of the lighting. We'll make it natural lighting. We'll have sand so people kinetically can actually put their feet in sand. They'll have free flip-flops, of course, to have all the cushion and support they need. But what I've learned is that when I think about why that works so well, is there's 3 essential things we're doing. And if you think about the beach, think about this as the sand, the surf, and the sun. They all do different things to our nervous system. The sand is the grounding element. So whether your feet are actually in the sand or they're in your backyard or they're in a jacuzzi bath or whatever, the feet have more nerves per square inch than anywhere else in the body. So the feet absorb energy. And when we're in urban settings a lot, we disconnect from the earth. So grounding is really important. I call it sanding. If you go to the beach and you do it, it's called sanding. Hashtag sanding, just kidding. Just totally made that up. But so we have sands, like what can we do to ground ourselves? Movement and activity, very important with that. Surf to me is the vibes. It's the good vibes. It's listening to the sound of the ocean waves crashing, which by the way, has been proven to be the most healing, helpful sound for the human nervous system. The sound of ocean, the sound of water running, waterfalls, birds chirping. Those are all patterns that are very soothing to us. And we should use our senses to literally come to our senses. So sight, sound, smells, touch, right? Getting massage, even if you need to do self massage, and stretching and things like that, super helpful. And the last one is the sun. So how do we lift our mood and our mindset? We focus on things that are positive. We see the helpers in the times of need. The fabulous Mr. Rogers said that, right? Even in the darkest times, there are people helping. Look for them. And I'll tell you what, doing these interviews with KUSI, they do an awesome job highlighting what people in our local community are doing to make a difference. And I tend to be like you, Todd. I'm like a global thinker, right? I'm like, how do I help? I mean, I was one of the first people to do a stress mastery webinar in China from here when this whole thing started. And I was sick, by the way, when that happened. So I'm always thinking big, big, big. I got to tell you lately, especially the last couple of weeks, I'm so focused on what's happening right in my own backyard. And if I wasn't, I probably would have missed the bioluminescence last night. My husband and I went down to the beach.
Same.
Oh my gosh.
I should have called you because I actually went down to La Jolla to see that. Right?
We were probably right next to each other and didn't know.
And you know what's amazing is interesting. I'm part of a Bible study right now with Pastor Miles McPherson, and Miles was just talking about that as far as he's a macro thinker as well, like you and I. But right now, the focus is like for him taking his vision of overseeing San Diego and in that community. And I think this is a global phenomenon going right now. I think people are very almost like nesting, right? They're protecting their environment and their community. So it's an interesting.
And let me say something specific about that, if you don't mind. And there's a little selfish intention here, and I don't usually do this, but Miles McPherson is one of the reasons I moved to San Diego. And he knows that. We've met a couple of times a long time ago, but I couldn't go to church anymore because it was too loud for me, because I'm so highly sensitive. I used to be in a worship band, so I used to love that. It's too loud for me. I can hardly find a church that I can go to and not feel overwhelmed by the bright lights and all the production and stuff. And I realize why we do that. I am so glad now because I feel like the virtual experience has totally stepped up their game. We've been watching church. We've been watching it with family members who are struggling. I've been, tweeting out and letting people know, check out Miles McPherson, because I think what he's doing is really incredible. But even that, it's like going back to our roots and really connecting, even if it's virtual. So a statistic that literally just came in a few minutes ago from my research partner, I asked him what data we're seeing, because we have the world's largest standardized database of brain research, which is awesome. Like, I don't even have to be smart. I just ask a question and they send me statistics. So I asked about that. In every way, our brains are fatiguing. We're seeing anxiety go up, stress go up, resilience going down. Like, we're seeing a lot of these factors. And I asked him this morning when I was out for a run, I said, hey, what are we seeing in social capacity? Because I know a lot of people are lonely right now, and I worry about the lonely people the most, because I've been there. I was single for 43 years. And I remember how hard that was.
Hmm.
And he said, interestingly enough, social use, social reaching out, online connection is actually higher than it's ever been. So I think we want to pay attention to what that actually means and know the difference, by the way, between correlation and causation. One doesn't lead to the other, but what we want to do is just be curious and say, okay, all of these things are struggling, but this is happening. People are reaching out more. There's an opportunity in that. Now, does that mean more people are social and that's why we're depressed? No, that's part of the problem with science sometimes is they go, oh, because of those two things. No, it means people are reaching out. And at the same time, to come back to what you and I were talking about, you can't be it all. You can't do it all. You can't serve everyone. You can't be on every webinar, every podcast. You can't do every Zoom happy hour. You're going to exhaust yourself. So I think we all kind of did that, right? Like I'm doing a daily podcast and then I accidentally booked 3 weeks out and went, yeah, I'm going to make that weekly. So I'm booked out a little bit, but soon I'll be weekly because it's too much for us. It's too much for other people. I think being really smart about how we're connecting, when we're connecting, why we're connecting is all really important.
Isn't it interesting that you're even discovering now of how you are connecting deeper? You're talking about the church service,
Yes.
that you're resonating with that style more. I think we're having a lot of, I'll call it consumer insights of how people are best consuming content right now. It's interesting, along with Pastor Miles, I happen to work with another pastor, Pastor David Jeremiah. He's 78 years old. When I talked to him 5 weeks ago, the thought of going live and doing services was kind of overwhelming. When I talked to Pastor Jeremiah the other day, they're reaching 10 times the amount of people online than they would on their television Turning Point series. Like, we're talking millions of people. And this is a 78-year-old man who's on fire right now. So it's interesting when you look at just how people are either consuming or putting out content right now is
Let
awesome.
me add one more to this little fun pastor name dropping experience, which I love because we want to give them all of our love and our support. They're doing a great job. I've listened for a very long time to Rick Warren.
Love it.
And one of the reasons I love him as much as I do is his authenticity and transparency around his son.
Yes.
Who committed suicide.
Yep.
And that has been a lifelong battle for me. And so I remember when it was happening, I was in a really dark place in my own life. And to be an expert on this and struggle adds a whole nother, twist. But I remember those moments and sitting there and I just was so grateful for him. I mean, he's been doing virtual stuff for a long time too. He had some health complications, so he was doing stuff. So that's just another example where I feel like, I was doing that and getting really involved there. But then there was also this switch of like, I can do that right in my own backyard. I'm going to reinvest again in the Rock Church. I'm going to make this about San Diego. And I think when we do that, if we can just kind of like, I know we all have these big visions of what we want to do and how we want to save the world. And I think that's great. But I think there's more power. And I think the brain is actually connecting on a deeper level and the nervous system feeling more safe and secure when we can just start here, like start in your own backyard, start in your own condo building.
Yeah. Hey, you just said, that's something you've always struggled with. What is it you've struggled with?
I have struggled with suicidal ideations since I was about 12. For me, it comes with the territory of the vasovagal syndrome, feeling hijacked by my own brain. I understand suicide, I think, way more than most. It's also what drives what I do. So for me, I've been open about it, but I have a feeling I'll be talking more about it because it is such an issue right now. The reason is because I also know what works. So I will share totally transparently that the ideas are often still there. I am a Christian. I am a believer. I don't believe that's an option for me. So I've always had that in the back of my head. But when the anxiety is overwhelming and when my brain is telling me that my life is always going to feel like this and I'm also hurting everyone else and actually everyone would be better without me. I mean, I know that doesn't make sense. It's not logical, but it's not the logical part of my brain that's telling me that. It's the survival part that's saying, you're making everyone around you miserable right now. You just need to give them the peace and they are going to be fine. I mean, it's just so twisted. I realize that. So the reason I share this is there are very good strategies. The things I can say, not from a textbook, but just from my own life are, number one, have someone in your life you trust to tell. I'll never forget the first time I actually honestly told my parents. And I remember it was so hard because I didn't want them to worry, but I said, look, I need you to really hear me on this. And don't try to fix it. Don't try to solve it. But if I feel like I can tell you when those voices start, the voices quiet down. All I really need is a safe space. So it started with my parents, then it became my best friend, Christine, then it became my husband. My husband has sat with me in those moments where I've said, this is so ridiculous. I see myself taking my own life. That's so stupid. I don't really want that. But if I do that and I have that conversation, the moment it starts, it doesn't take over. It doesn't create that loop. That's where the danger lies. And other couple things that, I have colleagues who really study this and they've built suicide prevention kits. One of my colleagues, Shelley, says you have to have a hope kit. And I do this. For me, I call it my sunshine folder. I have a bright yellow folder where I put thank you notes from clients, cards, monkey pictures, anything anyone's ever given me. And I'm lucky to do the work I do. I get a lot of people thanking me, and it's incredible, right? So in those moments when I feel like I would do everyone a favor if I just checked out, if the first thing I do is say to my husband, monkey brain's back, we're going to have to keep an eye on it. So I'm going to need you to stay close. We're going to be fine. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sunshine folder. I'm going to read a couple messages. And the third one, Todd, you're going to love. My husband is the one that came up with this one. He always says, all right, baby, we got to get new blood. And I know what that means. We got to go for a walk. We got to get outside. I got to breathe. Got to get new blood. He goes, you just got to get new blood to that brain. Gives me goosebumps up and down my entire body. And that's all I need. And in that moment, he goes with me, or he won't. He'll ask me what I need. Do you want me to go with you? Do you want me to give you alone time? I mean, so it's real. And I guess the last thing I'll say about this, because I know we're going a lot longer than intended, is I've worked with a lot of people who have violent episodes. I mean, some of our NFL alumni who have just had their heads smashed. And I hate saying that, but these people that I love, and I talk to them afterwards, and they really struggle with violent behavior, domestic violence, a lot of things. And these are really kind, loving people. And I've had that conversation. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll start to share. They have CTE, or they're having suicidal ideations, or they're having substance abuse problems. That's a great first step, but that is not the finish line. Because I tell you what we do as soon as we share, we suddenly start feeling this pressure. Like now we're supposed to be perfect. Just because I know that I have this does not mean that I'm healed. This is a daily thing. This is getting your mind right, literally is a daily battle that we go into.
Amen.
And I don't know, I see it less as a battle, probably more as a challenge, an opportunity for growth. And that's where the whole brain boss idea came from, was for me in my own fight, saying, today I'm going to be the boss of my own brain. I'm not going to let my brain hijack me into that stupid thinking. It's going to say it. I don't have to listen, because our brains say a lot of stuff we actually shouldn't listen to.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Heidi, first off, I want to thank you for just sharing what you shared. Because it's not easy to share that. And I know there are people out there who probably have the same types of feelings, or their sons or daughters do, or their moms or dads do. And I think as we go through this very interesting, peculiar time in our lives, your authenticity and just being real is going to save thousands of lives in this podcast and every other media outlet that you're doing right now. So I want to just, from my heart, thank you. It may be the deepest conversation I've ever had, or at least have had in a long time, because that's real talk. Yeah. That is real talk. And that is stuff that we need to hear right now. So let me just end it with this. If there's anything else that, you talk about get your mind right, anything else that you want to share when it comes to whether someone is dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. I love, by the way, please give John a big hug, not an air hug, a hug. Squeeze him really hard. The new blood, I love that. Trust someone and tell them, because you have to have the strength to share with it. The sunshine folder behind me, if you're not watching, you can visualize, I have a gratitude wall with all of the people who have handwritten me letters. And I read that frequently, and more frequently lately, because when you're putting out a lot, you need some kind of reminders of, hey, you know what? I don't know who's listening to this podcast. And matter of fact, let me please share now, as you guys listen, please make sure you reach out to Heidi and let her know that her words of courage of sharing that. If they help you in any way, tag her that, share that of what that means. Because I know for me, those handwritten letters, and if I see a DM on Instagram or something, that like I read that like you read that, and those are ways right now as a society we level up on that. So, any final words of wisdom? I mean, this whole episode has been amazing. I've laughed, I've cried. I was crying when you tell me I'm tearing up over here.
I am a roller coaster of emotions.
I love it. Jim Valvano said that's what living's all about: is you got to learn it, you got to learn, you got to live, you got to laugh, you got to cry.
I got to tell you, on that note, I guess I would kind of end with this. I am not anti-medication. I think that the right medication at the right time and the right person can be very helpful for mental challenges that we have. That said, a lot of us just need to really embrace who we are. I mean, talking about Miles, my husband and I did the spiritual gift test this weekend, and we went through that together. It was really cool because, I am an emotional roller coaster. And if I'm not careful, what I will do is say, I'm too much. I'm too much. I'm not enough. That was my whole inner dialogue. And so even coming out and talking about this, I always feel like, oh crap, there she goes, making it about her again. I just like cringe. But then I remind myself of something my dad said one time. He said a lot to me, not always helpful, but I adore my dad. And one thing he said to me when I was really struggling is, what if just one person was different because of what you did? And I see that literally, the barista at Starbucks, the person cleaning our condo building. My husband thrives on making people laugh.
Yes,
He's
he does.
Corny, silly. Half the time I'm rolling my eyes, but I'm so grateful. He just wants to make people happy. So I would say with that, like, get some, give some, right? Get some gratitude. Let it soak over you. When you do see something amazing and amusing, let it really wash over your nervous system. Don't just speed through life. Like, get some, take it in, and then give some. And it doesn't have to be in this massive way. It's great to strive. It's great to reach. It's great to have goals, all of that. But the smallest thing can have, I think, sometimes even a bigger impact because people aren't expecting it right now. So smile at someone, laugh at someone, tell someone their shoes look nice. It may not seem like a big deal, but you don't know how much that may have just lifted somebody.
Right. Heidi Hanna, thank you so much. I hope as you listen in that this is the beginning of you just following all that Heidi gives to the universe. And I know you have a lot of books, you have a lot of resources. If you could offer a few of those resources, I know you have got some gifts. Where can someone come into the Heidi Hanna universe and learn more about you and all the great things you're putting out?
There's so many portals. There's so many Heidi Hanna portals out there. Part of it is because I get creative and I've learned not to ask like my website team to follow my every whim. So I now have a series, I call them my .orgs. So my .orgs, just keep in mind, these are the websites I create in the morning after I do my prayer and meditation and all of that. So HeidiHanna.com is my primary website where people can see information. My .orgs I just want to mention because they're passion projects. So one of them is brainrecharge.org. That's actually where you can find information about the college program that we're doing. And I'm very excited to announce that we're going to be partnering with an amazing organization to launch this in New York City and Southern California this next month of May. So that's awesome. People can get more information there. We also have beachbrain.org where you can see my fun stuff that I do to get in my beach brain state of mind, including the essential oils. If people buy the oils, 100% of the proceeds go to the college program. But I also have the recipes there so you guys can make them on your own. And then the last one is beyondfunny.org. And that's where I share healthy humor. And I have on the See Funny tab, I have the COVID-19 comedic relief, like just need a moment to laugh and find things funny about this crazy situation. And then I have timeless humor, like Bob Newhart, I Love Lucy. It's all family friendly, by the way. I make sure to screen everything because that's important to me as well. So lots of options.
Guys, I'll put all of that in the show notes. If you never checked out, check out the show notes, all those .orgs. And also she has some great resources on a recharge ebook that she has and a free stress 360 survey. All of that will be in the show notes. So check it out. And on social media, best place, is it Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn? Where's the best place on that?
I'm trying
everywhere.
To keep up with you on Instagram. Man, I'm not very good, but I have to say Reef is primarily on Instagram. So I did an Instagram live for them recently. So I am on Instagram at Heidi Hanna, PhD. LinkedIn is really good because I have LinkedIn courses and I do LinkedIn Lives. And I'm on Facebook too at Heidi Hanna, PhD.
Yeah, and that's Hanna, Hanna, folks. I'll put all of her contact, how you find her in the show notes, so check it out. Heidi, thank you so much. That was just that was a special episode, and I thank you for who you are. Give John a huge hug for me for, man, I know we went a little bit longer than we anticipated, but for you just to share so much personal information and great wisdom for who you are and what you're doing for the universe. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, my brother. I hope to see you soon.
Can't wait. Wow. Oh, wow. Was that an amazing episode or what? Honestly, that was one of my most favorite episodes because it was so relevant. We talked about, stress and anxiety and depression and busyness and strategies. I loved her Fab Five, the things between eating, moving, sleeping, rest, and connecting. She got personal, talking about herself and her own struggles and suicidal thoughts and that epitomizes a woman who is creating massive impact. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed actually interviewing Heidi. And please follow her. Take a look. You can, again, go to HeidiHanna.com, HeidiHanna.com, or any of those resources. Just go to the show notes. I have all of them in the show notes to go in there and help you out through not only getting through this challenging time, but any challenging time that will be moving forth. Because the bottom line, we talk about get your mind right. It's an everyday battle, right? It's an everyday battle. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, can you do us a favor? Please do us a favor. Not only share it on your social media, but on this one, please go over to Apple, go to Apple and give us a 5-star rating. And please write a review. What did you love about hearing from Heidi Hanna? And what was it about this episode specifically that allowed you to really become better and to manage not only the day and the week, but your life and to think stronger? It's like, hey, if these are the things that Heidi's doing and Todd's doing, that then I can get through this as well. So please go over to Apple, go on to, regardless of where you listen to this podcast, go to Apple, give us a 5-star rating and write a review. They really help us continue so more people hear these words of wisdom. That was tremendous wisdom today. And I'm so grateful for you and your ears. If you happen to watch this on YouTube, we post these videos as well. So thank you. Have an incredible day. Thank you, Heidi Hanna. Thank you for all of you listening in today. I'm feeling extremely grateful for you today. Thank you. I love you, and God bless.